Welcome to the Paleo Show with today's guest, Leanne Vogel. She's a holistic therapist and nutritionist, I guess I should say, and she runs healthfulpursuit.com. And thank you so much for coming on the Primal Show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super stoked to be here.
Yeah, I know. I really got intrigued with some of your YouTube videos on keto and dieting, and then I went to your site and saw that you had all these great meal plans and were talking about desserts and all this great stuff that you usually can't have on a diet. You were putting out there, and I love your simplistic way of educating people. I think you're doing an awesome job, and yeah, thank you so much.
Oh yeah, wow. Geez, I'm blushing. Thank you. Thank you. I've really tried, I started Healthful Pursuit about 5 years ago, and at that point I was vegan, and I've come a long way since then, dabbling in paleo and then finding keto last year. So I've really run the line of different eating styles, and this is the first one that's given me such amazing results coming from where I came from. So to just see the power that this sort of eating style, by eating fat and losing weight and getting my hormones back online and feeling the best I've ever felt, it's mind blowing in a way.
That's awesome. I mean, especially since you came from a kind of vegan way of eating and to incorporate paleo, there's kind of a new trend where people are combining both of these things. It's called pegan. That's kind of new and in the news. And I just kind of found out about it. And I was like, you know what? At the Julian Bakery, which I run, we make so many paleo products, and the vegans are like, hey, what about me? And it's kind of a new way of thinking where you're starting to incorporate nuts and some of the things that are in the middle between vegan and paleo. And it's really given me a whole new kind of focus because these people previously haven't been able to eat anything. And obviously, I like to make things ketogenic too with food. So kind of combining more of the nut proteins and things that are non-animal based are awesome. But for yourself, I mean, talk to us a little bit about how maybe you felt when you were following a vegan way of eating and then all of a sudden kind of switching over to this ketogenic slash paleo way of eating.
Yeah, you bet. So before I met my husband, I was vegan, and he's German, and quickly converted me to eating meat because, I mean, every German that I know eats a ton of meat.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, but when we first met, he has a collection of photos on his computer of places where I would nap around the house. I was always sleeping all the time. He has an entire, I think there's over 150 photos of me just like passed out somewhere in the house, just exhausted.
Sure.
And so when I started eating animal proteins, it started off slow, but it really came from a place of every time I thought of eating, I wanted chicken. And for a long time, I fought that feeling. And then I just said, enough is enough. If I'm craving chicken this much, there's got to be something to this. And I can say that I no longer nap, and it's been about 6 years or maybe less that I switched over to eating meat. And then I was gluten-free at the time, and then started reacting to grains, and then I found paleo. And through all that, I found that it's a step in the right direction. I know that there's probably going to be something after this. I can't say that this is what I'll do for life because you learn and adapt with your body, and everything's changing all the time. But one major thing I noticed from being vegan to starting to eat animal protein is I didn't have those cravings for meat anymore because I was listening to my body.
Yeah.
And I wasn't having to nap like before work, after work, even during work. On my lunch hour, I would go into my car, turn it on, crank up the heat, and fall asleep for 30 minutes. Like, it was that bad. So
Yeah.
That was a big thing for me.
I can imagine. I mean, I think for myself too, I didn't have these sort of sustained, the sustained energy all day because my body before I went ketogenic was getting its energy from carbs, right, and sugar, and the breakdown of that. And I was always holding this extra layer of fat, and I was doing P90X, and I was doing all these extreme workouts, and I was still, being, inflamed. I had joint problems. And I noticed once I took away the sugar, the grains, and I got into this ketogenic fat burning mode, that layer of fat drops off, and you have great sustained energy all day long. And I think also part of it too is you have less things that are going to trigger an allergic reaction. So your allergies start to go away. A lot of people deal with brain fog. That kind of clears up, and all of a sudden you have this great clear thinking, throughout the day. And I just noticed myself feeling so much better. I wasn't crashing in the afternoon like yourself. And probably some of that has to do too with the spikes in blood sugar that would normally occur on a regular, diet. As you consume these grains, and you think you're going to go work out right after you consume, you carb up, and it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to get energy from carving up and then going to work out, which is totally not the way I was, taught. And it's just crazy. This whole new way of thinking and
Yeah.
eating. And so many people are suffering from just a lack of energy, and it just doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I was a major slave to my eating style. Even when I was paleo, I was still eating like sweet potatoes and loads of carrots and cassava and plantains, like a lot of them.
Sure.
And so I was not at all ketogenic. I would say my carb intake was probably around 200 grams. But when I went ketogenic, like you said, my brain functions so much better. Like I can get so much work done, and that pure energy where I can have a workout any time in the day and I don't have to worry about, oh, I need to carb before and I need to have carbs after and all this stuff. It's like I eat when I'm hungry, which is usually twice a day, if that. I don't have to pack food with me. I don't have to worry about those sorts of things. Whereas before it was like pack the protein bars and the extra snacks, and like I'm going on a 2-hour road trip. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it. Like that in and of itself, and not being restricted that way, it was huge when I switched over to eating more fat, less carbs. Amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy the amount of time you can actually go in between meals, because your body is burning fat, whereas before it's like you get into low blood sugar if you didn't eat every 2 hours. You're, oh, I'm tired, and you're sluggish, and you're constantly having to feed that kind of carb engine, which is ultimately just puffing you up. I always
Yeah.
called it. I always thought it was like a puffy kind of layer. It's hard to describe around your body, and it just holds onto this puffy layer. And it's actually water retention, and hormones and things like that, or increased estrogen level. And these things balance out. The water weight drops, your hormone levels balance out, and because you're burning at the fat level, your body ups all the great fat burning hormones, and you start to burn fat, and you start to get lean and shredded and strong. And,
Really quick too, like my progress pictures were in the span of 10 days, and like every part of my body changed very quickly. And like you said, definitely water weight. Like 1 gram of carbohydrate, stored carbohydrate, has about 3 to 4 grams of water stored. So for every 1 gram of carbs that you're storing, there's like 4 grams of water. That's a lot of water that we're holding on to. But in ketogenic, or when our bodies are burning fat as energy, we don't need all that extra, like you said, that fluffy layer. And that's exactly what it feels like.
Right.
It's fluffy.
Yeah, no, fluffy, puffy, whatever you want to call it. And it's something that, it was weird because I could always feel the muscle underneath this layer, because I was always doing strength training and so forth. And I think a lot of people are in that same position. They're working out all the time, and they're not able to see the results. And you see them in the gym year in and year out, and these people are never making any sort of progress. And it's sad. And it doesn't have to be that way. Excuse me.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm back. A little tickle in my throat. But tell us a little bit about your site and some of your diet programs.
Yeah, you bet. So Healthful Pursuit, I have over 780 recipes on my site right now.
Wow.
And about 300 and plus are low carbohydrate, and more are paleo. And so I post videos every week and recipes every week as well. So 2 posts a week.
Oh.
And I focus primarily on, might be crazy, but it's grain free. It's also dairy free, sugar free. So I try not to use a lot of stevia, xylitol, and stuff like that. I try to keep it natural. I like to focus on a little bit of treats because, when you're switching eating styles, it's really hard to get over, okay, well, what am I going to do for birthdays, and what am I going to do for, these events, especially in the summer, like barbecue. So I like to focus on some of those. And so my site also has a shop where I offer meal plans. So those meal plans are great for people that are maybe just eating a standard diet, and they're not really sure what to do when it comes to going gluten-free, dairy-free, grain-free, paleo. I firmly believe that if you're eating a standard diet, maybe you eat out once in a while and maybe you're addicted to sugar and you indulge in quite a few things, to go from that all the way to ketogenic eating, that's a huge step.
Absolutely.
And it's so overwhelming, and I would say 9.9 times out of 10, you'll make it a couple days and you'll be like, this is just too much, totally overwhelmed. So my meal plans allow people to first go gluten-free and dairy-free, see how that feels, try it out. And then the next stage is grain-free, so it allows you to do that. You can play around with nuts. Are you sensitive to nuts? How do you feel when you eat them? And then once you've gotten to that point, if you've gone grain-free, those plans are now paleo. And then switching over to eating more of a ketogenic eating style, I offer a book called The Keto Beginning, and it's a 30-day meal plan and program to taking it to the next level. So now you're lowering your carbohydrates, uptaking your fats, so that you can play around with how that ketosis feels in your body. So people don't have to necessarily measure and get super overwhelmed. It's like, here's the program, try it for 30 days, see how you feel, and then you can take it from there. And with that, there's a lot of resources out there that, now I'm not saying all keto resources, but a lot out there don't focus on whole foods. And that's a huge problem that I have with this ketogenic eating style, because I don't believe that a lot of people are or should be eating dairy. And like you said, that puffiness, it can come up with dairy as well. So my plan is no dairy, lots of whole foods. I always say you should never have to count your kale. Like, if you want kale, it's totally doable. And really focusing on less packaged products, more whole foods, so that people can also eat clean when they go through this journey.
I mean, a lot of what you're doing is eliminating a lot of the extra calories if you take a step back. And so obviously that's good, because everybody burns a certain amount of calories a day. And sure, there is definitely good calories and bad calories, as we know from, fruits and vegetables and fats and healthy fats. But I think overall, though, at the end of the day, it's better to follow an anti-inflammatory diet approach that's high fat, low carb, and like almost basically no sugar, but still not taking in an overabundance of fat, which is 9 times the calories, going way beyond what a body would normally burn. At least personally, I feel that it's still good to restrict, not to overdo the fat, because you're still taking in 9 times the calories. And what I see is a lot of people are dumping way too much butter, way too much dairy, or they're going way off into the super high fat intake, and I don't think it's necessary. And I think it could potentially cause those people to even gain weight or not to really lean down to their proper ideal weight. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's a couple trains of thoughts that, that I'm going towards. I had a girlfriend try a ketogenic eating style upon my recommendations, and after a month, she's like, Leanne, I gained so much weight. I'm like, okay, well, let's go through, what were you eating on a daily basis, everything. Turns out she was eating 4 handfuls of Brazil nuts a day.
Yeah.
4 handfuls of, so okay, yeah, totally. There's good fats, there's not so good fats, your corn oils and things like that, not so good. And your good fats, Brazil nuts are awesome, but 3 to 5 nuts is enough. I don't even know how many I don't even know how many nuts that is. So, there's that piece where, yeah, definitely. If you are overeating anything, like stuffing your face, of course, your body, if you're not listening to your body and you're eating too much, you're definitely going to gain weight. And I don't think it really matters whether it's carbohydrates or fats or protein. My practice is always listen to your body. When you're full, if you're halfway done your meal, just stop and put the rest in your fridge and eat it later. And so I think it just comes down to, there are many resources out there that just say, eat as much fat as you want, eat totally as much fat. But the thing about ketosis and how it works is that we're now in fat burning mode. If we're eating so much fat that our body never has a chance to burn the fat that's on our body, we're never going to burn the fat that's on our body. So there needs to be a space where we eat enough fat that we're in fat burning mode, but we're not eating as much fat that all of our energy requirements are coming from what we're eating and not from our body. That's kind of how I explain it. I mean, there's super detailed scientific way of explaining it, I'm sure, but basically if you're eating too much, you're just burning the stuff you're eating and not the stuff that's on your body. So for me, that's like around 140 grams of fat in a day. I find if I go higher than that, it's just unnecessary because I don't need it.
Well, I think a lot of people are overcomplicating, like you stated, and it's,
Yeah.
for me, it's like, look, there is all these great pieces of technology that we have. Now we have the iWatch and we have Fitbits and all these things, and what they're great at doing is measuring how many calories we burn in a total day. Now you take this piece of a technology, and guess what? You mix it with paleo and a ketogenic style of eating, and all of a sudden it's a win-win because you really don't have to take in more calories than your body is burning. You know, you really don't. And it's a good reference point to stop. So eat all the healthy foods, take in these healthy fats, but you don't have to consume way above your caloric burn for the day. And I think it's a faster way to get to your ideal weight, and to stay there is not to go way above and beyond what your body's actually burning.
Yeah, and it's I don't really like to count my calories all that much. I mean,
Nobody
I
likes to
find it's a
talk.
slippery slope.
No,
It's
nobody
totally a
likes to talk.
slippery slope.
Nobody
No.
likes to talk about it. No, and it stinks that it does come back to that. But what I like to do is say, hey, look, everybody's body burns a certain amount of calories a day. Why not combine that with what we know about, being in a ketogenic fat burning mode and paleo, and just not overdo it? Because I think a lot of people that are really pushing low carb, high fat diets, you look at how they look and they haven't reached their ideal weight themselves. And then you start thinking, well, why is that? And maybe it's because they're over consuming way too many calories. Now, sure, it could be other issues, like maybe they're gorging themselves or they're not exercising, because I think exercise is a huge part. And a lot of people try to get by without exercising. It's like, oh yeah, I'm burning fat, I'm not exercising. Well, I mean, exercising is a vital part. I mean, I think diet is 70% and working out is 30%. It really is. You have to do it. And anybody that says otherwise, sure, you might lose some weight, but you're not going to get to that ideal weight of yours, whatever that number is.
Yeah, I find with eating high fat, the bonus to this is I used to be a marathon runner, and now I was at my heaviest weight actually when I was a marathon runner, and it wasn't muscle. Like I had a nice big layer of awesome fuel that I wasn't cashing in on because I was burning glucose.
Right.
So, but now, I maybe do one heavy lift a week and like one session of heavy lifting a week, and then maybe one or two high intensity interval training. And that's like pushing it like as hard as I possibly can. And then I walk everywhere. I walk for at least 2 hours a day. And so, yeah, definitely your workouts can change, but I agree with you. There needs to be some sort of movement because that also keeps us inspired to make healthy choices. Because if we're sitting all day and not moving, I feel like we're going to make less healthy choices when it comes to our food just because we're not feeling good about where our bodies are at, regardless if we're eating fats or using carbohydrates as fuel or anything else.
Now, an interesting point that you brought up there, is about glycogen, maybe replenishment. Being a runner and stuff like that, you're doing these physical activities. Do you ever get to a point where, like, you know what, I need to reload a little bit? And at what point is that for you, and what do you reload with? For myself, I usually do it with sweet potato, and I would do it immediately after a workout. I think there's like a little 20-minute window that I'll reload in it, and it really doesn't knock me out of that ketogenic fat-burning mode.
Yeah, you bet. So in ketosis, what we're doing is we're draining our body of the glucose stores so that we can switch over to fat-burning mode. So when we're working out, one of the benefits of carbohydrates is that insulin spike, which can help us grow muscles. So usually if I'm doing a heavy lift, usually on my heavy lifting days, I'll have a carbohydrate after my workout. Now there's a little bit of I've heard a couple ways of doing this. One is, like you said, the 20 minutes. I met with another individual a week or so ago, and she was saying about 45 minutes. So I just work out, and then an insulin spiking carb could be something like a really overripe banana, something with a lot of glucose, primarily is best. And then I'll just whip that up with some water and some protein powder. And then there's that if you're lifting. And then there's another carbohydrate sort of load or replenish. And especially I find this is really important for women, is that women in my practice working one-on-one with clients, we need a little bit more carbohydrates and more loading up of carbohydrates than men might, is usually what I'm seeing. And so for me, every 3 to 4 days, I'm having like a carbohydrate meal. I'm trying to combine a ketogenic eating style with a FODMAP eating style right now.
Oh.
Oh man, this is like a whole other journey. And so I haven't been doing sweet potatoes. I've been doing a lot of carrots and parsnips. I can get by with a little bit of plantain, but not too much. And so, yeah, I find that for some of my clients, especially my women clients, it's inability to sleep is a good indication that you've gone too low carb for too long. If you've hit a plateau with your weight and you're just not moving either way, some of them are anxiety. So if you have a history of depression or anxiety and it's starting to pop up, usually it's time for a carb up. And then you start to know, okay, well, I'm starting to feel a little bit of anxiety. It's been 4 days since I've done a carb up. So I'll have my carb up tonight, but maybe next time I'll go 3 days and see how my body responds. So then you know your time is 3 days, and then your anxiety never pops up. You're able to sleep, and then you know every 3 days at night, it has to be at night, have your carbs at night. You have those carbs like you said, sweet potato, cassava, plantain, have those carbs. And it doesn't have to be like a gorge fest. It's just make your meal, have some carbs with it, and move on with life.
Yeah, I found that and it's not all the time, but if I have a really intense workout, I always try to load right after. It's called an anabolic window.
Yeah.
And there's actually some clinical studies that are now available, government studies, whatever, that you can actually reference this window. Because a lot of people think it didn't exist. But personally, I found, hey, if I mix a little protein with a high amount of like sweet potato or something like that, not overdoing it once again, but I have a powdered sweet potato I mix in with some egg white.
Amazing.
And so I have that right after. So I load up, and that's it. And I feel so great for days. I don't have to have it for another few days. But that's really the only major carbs I'm having, other than like broccoli or vegetables or something like that.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about getting into ketosis, maybe how long it takes to get into this fat burning mode, and maybe some tips and tricks that you found along the way. I know I have a couple, but I wanted to hear yours first.
Yeah, you bet. So it differs for everybody. I've had clients that have gotten into fat burning and the ketogenic state in a matter of days. All in all, in my book, The Keto Beginning, I kept a journal of the first 30 days of doing this eating style right off the bat. So like day 1, 2, 3, and everything that I was experiencing. It wasn't until about day 21 where I felt like on top of the world. So for instance, like the first couple of days, your body's kind of getting used to, okay, a little bit of confusion of what's going on. I'm not having the carbohydrates. I experienced a lot of cravings those first couple of days. Like all I want is sugar and carbs and just put them in my mouth right now. And so once I got over that, about day 4, I remember waking up, and that was the point where I was completely drained of the glucose, and my body knew that there was fat, but it was really confused, and I did not feel good on that day. It was, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not one to sugarcoat things. I didn't feel so hot.
Flu.
Yeah, the keto flu. And one thing that I learned about the keto flu that I didn't know before, and had I known, I think I definitely wouldn't have felt what I did, is electrolytes are so important. So in my book, I talk a lot about a recipe that I put together called Keto Lemonade. And it has salt and lemon and filtered water mixed up together, and drinking that throughout the transition. Every client and everyone in our Facebook group that has purchased the book and is all about it uses it and has far more success than I did adapting. So making sure that we're eating enough salt, because at this point we're not having any processed foods, so we need salt, we need that balance. And avocados are also really good for that. They have like everything in them that you need.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like the super nutrient of the keto of the world. I really believe everyone should be eating avocados, unless you're FODMAP, then don't. But so for this, after day 5, I started getting into the groove, but there was one day where I woke up, I was traveling throughout this whole experience, and I did a 4-hour paddleboard, like stand-up paddleboarding before breakfast down a river with a bunch of hardcore dudes. Like, it was super intense. I hadn't had breakfast. I got home, and I wanted to go for a run after. And I mean, and I hadn't even eaten anything. And it was at that moment where I was like, whoa, I think I'm adapted because I just felt so good and my energy was so clean. And that was the moment that I knew, like, this is definitely something to this. And then over time, the reason I got involved in ketosis was because my hormones went completely offline about 8 years ago. And no matter what I did, I could not get them back. And hormone replacement therapy, I went on about 2 years ago. It just made me gain a bunch of weight, and then I couldn't lose it. And so for this ketosis stuff, it was to lose the weight and get my hormones back online. And after 6 months, my estrogen was higher than it had ever been in the last 8 years. And that in and of itself was huge for me. So with a lot of my women clients, when it comes to hormone regulation, I've put together a whole protocol on, like, how do we use the power of ketosis and high-fat eating to help us get our hormones back online.
Yeah, interesting. Have you ever played around with apple cider vinegar or like an injection of B12 to actually jumpstart people into ketogenic fat burning mode to shorten the amount of time?
That's a really good. I use apple cider vinegar to reduce the glycemic load of my meals. Like, I put it on everything, and I use it to help with digestion. But I have never heard of actually using apple cider vinegar to get people into ketosis. Really?
Yeah, I mean, I've read that it does shorten it. I mean, I use it all the time, and I'm usually in it, but I didn't use it when I first started. But it's something I've since read about, and it shortens the amount of time that it can possibly take. Also, high loads of like B12 to kind of kickstart it too. It's just something interesting I read about.
I'm going to have to look that up because I started taking B12 shots a couple of months ago, just because I thought my doctor said that I needed it. And in fact, last week, he taught me how to do it myself. So I tried to give myself a B12 shot at home, and I ended up fainting.
Oh no.
Smacking my arm on so if you're going to do B12 shot, guys, maybe get your doctor to do it, unless you know for certain that you're not afraid of needles, because it totally wreaked havoc on my arm.
We're in like Southern California, so they're like everywhere. Like, it's like $15. You go in, you get a shot, and done. Like, it's super cheap.
Wow.
Yeah,
cool. That's really interesting. I'm going to have to look that up, because I know when I started eating keto, I crave apple cider vinegar. Like, I eat a whole jug, like one of those big jugs, about once a month. Like, I go through that stuff like crazy. That's really interesting. Okay, cool.
So tell us a little bit about desserts. Like, for myself personally, we love to use stevia, monk fruit here at the Julian Bakery. And it's not just any stevia that we use. We actually use a stevia leaf that's enzymatically broken down from the leaf itself. So you actually get all the real benefits of it. And I found it's great because you can consume and get a sweetness if you actually like stevia. And most people do, but some people do find a little bit of an aftertaste. But that being said, though, I think it really satisfies at least my need for dessert. And monk fruit's another great one too. But I think a lot of times people think about stevia and they're not properly educated that there are different types. Now you have Coca-Cola manufacturing it as like a chemical, which is probably better than whatever else they were using, but still it's not good for you. You're not getting the real benefit of the stevia leaf themselves, which is actually immense. What do you use maybe for your desserts? I see I'm actually on your page right now. I've seen quite a few great things, especially on your Instagram account also.
Yeah, we love the desserts over here. Yeah, I think, like I said, if you're adapting to a different eating style and treats are really important to you, I really feel like that is important. Now, a couple of people have said, well, if your body's craving a cookie and you give it a stevia cookie, it's still going to want the regular cookie. I'm not sure I agree with that. I've used these sorts of treats to help me get over a lot of different types of addictions to food and really create that healthy relationship with food. I think it all comes down to balance. I agree with you. Of all the alternative sweeteners, I choose stevia. And you're right, there's definitely good flavor stevia and not so good. Like, I've tried some and the aftertaste is just horrendous. And then there's some that are really clean and nice. And I think if you have a bad stevia experience, a lot of people just stay away from it. But there's so many different kinds. I really love the alcohol-free kinds because I find it's a cleaner taste. But for when it comes to ketogenic and treats and things like that, there's things called fat bombs. And we can overdo the fat bombs. I've had many a client overdo the fat bombs. And basically, these are high fat treats, usually about 90% fat or more. And I use it to help my clients get in the mode of fat burning, because those first 5 days, like what I was saying with the cravings and stuff, your body's a little bit confused of like, what the heck is going on here? So when you crave sugar, I use fat instead. And a little bit of stevia goes a long way. Like if I make a whole batch of treats, then I'll use maybe 1 drop of stevia just to give it a little bit of sweetness, so that, you know, that helps alleviate that sugar craving, and then hit yourself with a bunch of fats, because that fat will help to alleviate your craving a lot quicker than that bag of candy that you might be craving, and then you just want more candy, whereas the fat combined with just a little bit of sweetener goes a long way. There's also xylitol, and if it's birch sourced and from the US, it can be a good source, but I find a lot of people have digestive issues because they eat too much too quick, and we have to like work our way up to xylitol. I guess our body has an enzyme that will break it down, but because we don't use it, it needs to grow and flourish. But yeah, stevia is my number one choice, and fat bombs are really easy. And then yeah, I made donuts the other day with a base of plantains and eggs, and they're a lot less carbs than your average donut, and I think about 5 grams of sugar, so you can really have fun with it. And yeah, nuts are a good delivery system, but like I said, 4 handfuls of nuts with a bunch of, you know, it can get to be overwhelming.
Yeah, and there's such a concentration when you look at a really, you know, nut-based solution. Like we used to make an almond paleo bread,
Yeah.
one net carb, keto, all this stuff, and it was just blanched almond. And what I learned is it's just too much. So what we did is we ended up blending it in with coconut and then the egg whites, keeping it nice, light, and fluffy. And it was so much better. People really were able to hit their ideal weight a lot faster with that kind of, like, you know, just blending out some of the almond. There's so many, like, way too heavy, you know, nut-based recipes out there.
Yeah, and you're like, what? This cookie? Like, okay, fair enough, it's a cookie, but who just eats 1 cookie? So then you're eating 4 cookies, and your brain thinks it's 4 cookies because that's how much you would normally eat, but that's a lot of nuts. That's a lot of nuts.
Yeah,
So I agree with you. How can you switch things up, add more egg, like kind of play around with it to change the ratios when you're baking this way?
if you ever get a chance, Now Foods has a better stevia line that we offer, and they have like 12 different flavors. And what's great is like we make like unflavored protein powders and stuff that can be used in baking. So you start mixing the flavor in with the plain protein into your mixes, and all of a sudden you've got great high protein, you know, whatever it is that you're making. It's just a very easy way to curb the sweet tooth. Like I routinely use, like they have a lemon one that I mix with egg white protein, and it tastes like Trix, like cereal.
I'm gonna have to try that. I have all of them. It's my favorite stevia of all time. I wasn't sure if I should name drop, but yes, now Foods makes the best stevia. That's the only one I recommend ever.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. So, well, do you have anything coming up? Any new books? Any new exciting things coming out?
Yeah, so in the fall, I will be releasing something new, and it has something to do with high-fat living, and I'm pretty stoked about it. It's like the next phase after the keto beginning. And for now, I'm working on my YouTube channel, and that started in January. And like you mentioned, it's going really well, and I love making videos. I just actually shot a video yesterday of me eating all day. So every time I ate, I came to the camera and I'm like, this is what I'm eating, and this is why, and this is how to eat high fat. Because a lot of people are like, yeah, but how hard is this? And what do you actually eat on a daily basis? So it went from being in my pajamas and way too early to be making a video all the way through to nighttime to kind of show like, this is how easy it is to eat this way. So that'll be coming out very shortly.
I think you're touching on something that's so important, is just making it easy for people. People literally love, like, they want to see what's in my grocery cart. So now on Instagram, I'm taking pictures of what's in my grocery cart, and they want to know every little detail. And because I think people are so either misinformed or just completely have no idea what's out there, and it's getting so much easier to eat in this fashion now at the grocery stores, because companies like myself, we're starting to get it. We got the message loud and clear. People don't want sugar. They don't want a bunch of carbs. make it low carb for us, and it's so much easier to eat this way. So
And convenient too. Like get all your fresh produce, grab some really quick snacks that you can have with us with you when you're traveling, and you're set. And I only eat twice a day, so I mean, those people that are eating 6 times a day, that's a lot of effort. I don't want to do that again.
no, that's so awesome. Well, I'm so glad to have had you on the show. Make sure everybody go to healthfulpursuit.com. Check out, Leanne's YouTube page. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you get our updates for the Primal show here. And thank you so much for coming on. And I'm looking forward to all your new upcoming recipes. So,
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. That was a blast.
all right, thank you so much.